What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 63, and I am the host, Kyle Lanzalone. On today's show, I have an interview with Matteo Marchionni, who's an international relations student at Suffolk University and the host of the Neutral Partisan Report. He could be found on Twitter at NP Report or at neutralpartisan.com. Yeah, his show is really great, somewhat similar to Conflicts of Interest. He breaks down current events going on in a lot of the same general subjects that I'm interested in: U.S. foreign policy, Julian Assange, freedom of speech, that kind of really, really important issues. So definitely check out Mateo's work, and I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. We talk Biden and how he's being received in Europe. We talk Afghan policy, Syria policy, and how to communicate without the government getting involved. So, a lot of important stuff on today's show. You can find the show at YouTube. Conflicts of Interest is the channel there. There is a lbry.tv account now for Conflicts of Interest, and I'm uploading the shows there. I'm working on getting verified on Subscribestar, and then everybody will be able to donate to the show that way. All the links are in the show notes page. I'm the news editor at the libertarianinstitute.org, where this show and all my work gets published. So be sure to go to the Libertarian Institute for the show notes page and to see my daily news roundup. And then you could also support the show by checking out the show's sponsor, Paloma Verde. PalomaVerdeStore.com is where you go to get your CBD products. I know more and more people are using CBD, finding it very helpful in relieving some mental health, anxiety, stress, stuff like that, or in relieving like physical pain and just helping you overall to relax and feel better. And so Paloma Verde is a great place to get your CBD products because they're lab tested. They're all guaranteed to be exactly what they say they are on the bottle, and they're well dosed and they work great. And so PalomaVerdeStore.com is where you go and use the promo code PEACE, PEACE, at checkout. And when you do, you'll get 25% off and you will help support the show. So thanks for supporting the sponsors, sharing the show, and everything y'all do to have been doing to help this show to grow. And let's get into the interview with Matteo.
Yep.
Hey, Matteo, welcome to Conflicts of Interest. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Carl. How are you?
Doing well. So, one of the interesting things you got going on is you're in the UK. And if I've read anything in the US mainstream media, it's that the rest of the world is just absolutely delighted, rainbows and sunshine, that Joe Biden is the president and that the mean orange monster, Donald Trump, is out. He was rude to our allies and a huge problem. And I guess the first place I want to just start off our conversation is getting into is that how the reception is over there, or I'm just interested in how accurate that is.
Yeah, I would say that is kind of the depiction that at least the media gives, because I would say there's a general sentiment of like happiness that Trump's gone rather than Biden coming in. So I guess whoever it would have been regardless, there's like a huge sentiment against Trump, I guess. But I guess the people, there's reasons I understand for this to be the case, but I think that the media played a role. And for people who maybe are not particularly involved in politics or don't follow it that much, I think what happened at the Capitol was defining because everybody heard about that, and maybe that shifted their opinion. But personally, I think there has been a misinterpretation generally of Biden because of this, the sentiment of Trump leaving mainly, and which has left not much critical analysis of Biden and who he is and his past. And I come from Italy as well, and I think like the media seems to be kind of similar across the spectrum. But ultimately, maybe the government, on the other hand, the conservative government, I think, was probably more happy with Trump. The Boris Johnson, and also because Trump was pro-Brexit. On the other hand, I think it's important to acknowledge that Trump was always kind of a wild card. So maybe Biden does bring a bit of stability with UK-US relations, especially now that the UK is out of the European Union and will, have to strengthen that tie with international allies. But yeah, I think it ultimately depends on like what perspective we're looking at this at. So from
Yeah,
people's perspective, government, or foreign policy, which is of course what you cover here mostly on the show. Whoever's interested in that knows that not much is probably going to change with regards to that. And yeah, even actually, live in Brighton, and here I would say most people are very on the progressive side of the left, and yeah, I would say that part of politics is not happy with sort of establishment Biden.
so it's a lot of that we hear over here. People, I've been able to breathe for the first time in 4 years, more feeling than actually any kind of real excitement for Joe Biden himself.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
all
would
right.
say so.
Yeah, I mean that's about what you expect. I'm guessing even there's some of that with people with Obama, where it wasn't as much Trump, just that Obama was gonna make him feel better. Um, so you had Brexit, right, in the UK, and that was, kind of breaking away from the European Union. Is there any interest in getting out of NATO? Because I would imagine that would be the real point between like Biden and Trump with the UK on foreign policy, is that Biden's going to be far more committed to NATO, far more committed to like the mutual defense. And while Trump was a expansionist with NATO, the rhetoric wasn't always matching his expansionist policy, and that seemed to be a real concern for a lot of like the just the NATO collective. And I mean, I guess it's not just Trump. Marcone said that NATO was brain dead, so there's other recognition of this too. But I'm just wondering if there's any like movement for that in the UK, especially just with Brexit. Maybe they're looking for a little bit more independence on other issues too.
Sure. No, honestly, I haven't heard much about it. I don't think there's ever been a discussion with regards to leaving NATO. It's not something that has been talked about. So, not when Trump decided to leave, really. And I don't think it's not come up now. So, it remains probably an important, alliance that the UK has when it comes to, since it's one of the major countries, involved in conflicts around the world. So having that support, it's, Trump was always saying how the US was giving more than what it was taking. But
Right.
at the end of the day, countries like the US and the UK are the ones who are kind of driving the policy of NATO. So I don't see why they would want to leave that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it works as a pretty good subsidy. Although, I mean, the UK does have its own nuclear weapon arsenal, so it's not like it would lack a nuclear deterrent and stuff like that. Or a country like Italy, would. Although I think they actually house U.S. nukes, and so that's a little bit of a nuclear deterrent, I suppose. Anything else on Biden? Anything else you've heard interesting about what people expect with Biden? Anything that they're really excited for, or really worried, concerned about with Biden? Any concern like about his age or mental well-being?
Yeah, I think people who are informed on politics will question all these things, as is for the UK, in the US, sorry. But when it comes to the general public, as I said, I think there's just a happiness that Trump has left. Maybe the last thing I'd add is that Biden has Irish roots. I think both of his parents were from Ireland, and this was more of an issue before Brexit happened. Of this, there was a possibility basically with the UK leaving, and that there was going to be what is called a hard border between Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and Ireland itself, which is independent. But obviously, that would have happened if there was going to be a no deal. So, like, a no deal Brexit. But for now, things stay the same. But just to say that going forwards, if there's any issue maybe between the UK government and Ireland in some way, the Biden kind of roots and He's visited Ireland many times. His support for the country, I think, might be interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's a good point, and something that's not always on, the foreign policy radar because it's not in the Middle East or something like that. But it could cause, international relation tensions and stuff like that. You did a recent episode on, some alternatives and communications, including WhatsApp. Uh, this is we've had some interesting headlines in recent days. I guess the FBI actually, our Facebook actually just turned over private messages like willingly to the FBI. Not with a warrant and stuff like that. And so people are increasingly concerned about censorship and, online data security. What isn't going in and out of the hands of the U.S. government? Hell, I just read and talked about on the show on Monday that the DIA was buying up location cell phone data and stuff like that without a warrant. They just, buy it because these companies sell it. And so having some data security seems pretty important. So what's going on here with WhatsApp?
Yeah, so WhatsApp rolled out, well, not yet, but they started sending out these basically, if you have WhatsApp, you would open up the app. This is a couple of weeks ago, and you'd be forced basically to accept that new policies, the new terms of service, or to continue to use the app. Otherwise, you would have to uninstall it. And so these new policies would come in on the 8th of February, but have now been pushed out to the 15th of May, mainly because of all this kind of backlash that's been happening because of this new policy update. But it was definitely blown out of proportion because actually the people who are affected by these changes are actually people on WhatsApp Business, which is like not what most people use. So there's the WhatsApp to communicate, with your friends application, and then there's the WhatsApp Business, which is basically, to help businesses talk with customers and interact that way. And so the changes basically only apply to WhatsApp Business, and even then they're quite limited, And so it's more of a clarification, I would say, because they're just basically saying in the open how they're collecting a certain amount of data and using it with Facebook data basically to for advertisement purposes and stuff like that. But when it comes to the general public, I think not much has changed. I mean, your messages are still going to be encrypted. And although there's a lot that WhatsApp shared already, like since 2016, they've always been sharing your profile name, profile picture, your even your signal strength, your app version, all sorts of information, especially metadata, which one example would be when you have a call with someone, they wouldn't know what the call is about, but they know who you've spoken to for how long and all of that, which, sometimes metadata is even more important information than the actual details of the content, because it allows you to conduct bigger data analysis and can be more useful. So yeah, with that being said, I do think we always have to be very it was interesting to see how this pop-up which I was talking about also came up on everybody's phones. So even people who are using the normal WhatsApp, which is interesting. But there's always, I think, definitely good reason to be skeptical about everything that these the big tech companies do, and especially because they are very, in my opinion, there's lots of connections between the private and the public sector when it comes to this. Even intelligence services need that data and work together for national security purposes and whatever. And so we need to be skeptical. And also, I should probably add that this update anyway didn't concern the European Union or the Europe, but more so the United States and India, for example. And so basically, I guess it was a bit blown out of proportion. Lots of people started downloading Signal, which is and Telegram, which are two alternative apps. And I've always been recommending Signal. I believe it's the best messaging platform because it is end-to-end encrypted as well by default. It doesn't collect any data, and it's open source, so all of its code is basically verifiable, and you can check that everything is encrypted properly. So, which is not the case with the other two applications. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I would guess about 5 years ago, I think there was a story on how the Lebanese intelligence was able to somehow break Signal and was somehow downloading some of that data. But since I've heard some very good things about Signal. So one of the things I guess is remembering to the U.S. San Bernardino. I think that was in the early 2010s, maybe 2015. I don't know. The years are again harder to remember which one's which. Anyways, after that, they had the phone of one of the terrorists, and they had demanded, Apple let them into the phone, and this was a big deal, and Apple wasn't doing it. And at the time, I was kind of encouraged, feeling like the tech companies were interested in standing up to government. But more and more, I feel like that's not the case. And as Facebook turning over these messages without a warrant, just giving them to the FBI, it seems like that's a sign that we're headed more in that direction. And so, it is like one of the concerns with WhatsApp, its connection with Facebook, and I guess it is what we need to be looking at, not necessarily just the like software itself, end-to-end encryption being extremely important, but the company that is providing that service.
Absolutely, I think it is, a really good. It's a good enough reason to, be concerned about WhatsApp or even Instagram, although it's different because Instagram, isn't encrypted and stuff like that. But definitely, absolutely, like we know how Facebook has, breaches some our data, and how often they've done that without telling people. And now there's obviously been in the US across the last year mainly. These big tech hearings with regards to monopoly and everything, and things like this are being discussed, which I think is good. I mean, it's about time. But yeah, I think it's people continue to use them anyway because they're still very popular, and one, I think people don't care enough about privacy probably, and because they are convenient at the end of the day, and second of all, it's why would you switch to another application where there's no one there to speak to, right? Any of your contacts. So I hope in the future, we slowly are able to maybe transition to Signal or some other alternatives. But yeah, the tech code's very interesting in that sense, and because you can, as much as algorithms are like, technically perfect, there's always also at the same time ways to exploit certain algorithms and technology just in general, basically. So that's always something to be aware of for sure.
Do you have a favorite, so if somebody wanted to have a conversation that they didn't want anybody else to possibly see, whether that was the government or someone else, do you have I would have that on this app, or is it just basically, person to person is the real best way to do it?
Well, I guess person to person is always better, but as I said, I would recommend Signal. For now, it's the best option out there, and in my opinion, I have a few friends on there. It's just a few people who may be concerned more about privacy. But even then, I think it's that's the best option at the moment. But we should always, stay vigilant because things change, even behind the scenes. For example, if it gets brought up in some way, and so we need to always be careful. But that's what I would advise.
All right. Anything else on the encrypted messengers that we should be keeping an eye on, or that's interesting news?
Maybe one last thing. I think today, Signal actually tweeted out. It has to do with Iran. So Iran, basically, Signal became the number one app downloaded on the App Store in Iran, and Iran's been trying to block it, basically completely censor it because, yeah. And and so basically they tweeted out saying they're trying to find a way around it so that this basically ban cannot carry on. And so I thought that was quite interesting to connect with maybe foreign policy and things of that nature.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things that I've seen in, when you hear about protests occurring in countries like Iran, in the past you had heard them connecting on Telegram. I feel like there's been a couple other countries, especially in the Middle East, where I've heard Telegram has been used as like kind of the means of communication for those events. And more and more, I'm hearing and seeing my American friends starting to having to use the strategies of people in countries like Iran, where the internet is really limited and there's a lot of government control, in order to connect with people. And so an increasing number of people I know are pretty much just using apps like Telegram, Signal, and stuff like that to communicate with their friends, especially after they've been like kicked off of Facebook and stuff like that. And um, I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit ahead of the curve because I've watched so many of these protests and stuff and occur in other countries and see the different methods that they use to communicate and everything. But I think that's especially important to keep an eye on as Americans coming up, because it seems like we're going to be faced with more and more. I mean, I guess you being in the UK, probably pretty much the same thing, right? I saw that Facebook took down some like left wing UK groups recently, and that caused a little bit of a stir on left wing Twitter, at least.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And we need to be, we need to be slowly become more and more understand basically these things because, I think censorship is definitely something, freedom of speech that everybody has a word. I think it's very important. And I think people are starting to realize that, hopefully.
All right, I want to move on and talk a little bit of foreign policy here with you. From the Biden Afghan policy, we haven't heard very much from Blinken's, that is Biden's Secretary of State nominee, Antony Blinken. From his testimony, it sounded like the Biden team hadn't gotten the nuclear deal prior, or not the nuclear deal, the Taliban deal that the U.S. signed under Trump. Actually, I ain't gotten a copy of like the secret annexes or whatever is like the stuff they didn't reveal to the public about that deal prior to taking office. And so I feel like there's quite a bit of question as to what the Biden policy will be, but it may be a little bit of an encouraging sign. And it's kind of amazing to say because Zalmay Khalilzad doesn't have the best record, but Biden is planning on retaining Zalmay Khalilzad as special envoy for Afghan peace. This is the guy who negotiated the agreement that says we're leaving. The U.S. is leaving Afghanistan in May, and I assume that means taking the rest of the international forces with them. I can't see the NATO forces staying if the U.S. isn't there, and so this seems like a possible step in the right direction. A sign from the Biden administration that yes, maybe we're getting out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think you're completely right there. You just told me this. It was news to me because I had no idea that the new administration hadn't been briefed with up until now, basically with the deal itself. So yeah, that's quite interesting. I think I don't know. I guess t technically the idea is to try and get out of Afghanistan slowly. Although I think there are lots of private contracts there, so that's just a bigger debate that needs to be had. But um, yeah, at the moment, I think we don't have that much information with regards to what Biden and Blinken will want to do with regards to Afghanistan. So for now, I guess they're keeping what's already in place, and then we'll see if going forward things will change, if they'll renegotiate another deal of some sort or something like that.
This is one of the real problems with the U.S. media, though, where we have this real important policy in Afghanistan, a peace deal with a deadline that's coming up in a couple of months. And there's been relatively no questions asked to the Biden administration as what they're going to do. Are they going to follow the plan or not? I'm just, making an inference from what Antony Blinken said during his confirmation testimony to the Senate. I mean, they could have showed the Biden team that plan, and he's just like pretending like he doesn't know what it is or something to buy some time or something like that. But you know, if you go and look at mainstream media, you'll see story after story about Biden's dogs and the shelter that they came from. You know, Biden's press secretary is answering questions about his favorite kind of ice cream, and you know, different things that the guy likes to do, cookies or something. Questions about the paint scheme on Air Force One and what the plane's going to look like under the Biden administration. But I haven't seen a question about Yemen. I haven't seen a question about Afghanistan. I haven't seen a question about Syria or Iraq. And it's very odd that they would not be trying to find what's going on and you know what the US is going to do about these wars coming up. No, I mean there have been questions about the Iran nuclear deal, so it's not like they've completely ignored the foreign policy topic, but anywhere where the question's going to be really tough for Biden, they seem to be trying to essentially just, you know, focus on the puff things like his wife being a doctor or him having two dogs.
Absolutely, I completely agree. You know, and as I was saying for the UK as well, I think that's kind of how the portrayal of Biden's been, you know, as he comes into office. And there hasn't been much critical questioning of you know his policies and his past policies, and rather it's everybody seems to just you know talk be happy that Trump is gone, and I more broadly, I think foreign policy in general, unfortunately, is just something that is not debated as much as it should be. Even within I remember following the debates leading up to the presidential election, and you know the questions regarding like I know we're in the middle of the whole COVID situation, but you know of course foreign policy remains very important. There were hardly any questions on that, which I was you know. Uh, that's just how the media operates, and I think it's I guess that's why we talk about it here and stuff, because at the end of the day, what happens in foreign policy also affects what happens at home as well. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember they canceled the debate that was supposed to be like the foreign policy debate, and so they asked Biden one question about North Korea during the second debate, prefaced it with it's going to be the shortest question of the debate, and he just went up there and for 30 seconds said thug 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 thug, and that was Biden's foreign policy as far as I could tell from the debates. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, this guy was talking about packing the Supreme Court a month before the election, was never like asked questions, but still isn't asked questions. Hey, Biden, you gonna pat the court? They're still not concerned about asking him questions like that. It's quite amazing, you know. But like you said, we have to ask those questions. One of those questions is about Syria, where we know that the people Biden has surrounded himself with are people who wanted more intervention in Syria under the Obama administration, and they're people that you know were against anything Donald Trump did to ramp down in Syria at all. Not that he did a lot of that, not that he should get a whole lot of credit for turning down the war in Syria, but every time he suggested doing that, these people absolutely lost their minds and flipped out. And so it seems like the Biden policy could be an escalation in Syria. And we're getting stories out that the U.S. had brought a convoy into northwestern Syria, which is territory that the U.S. Has been operating in for, I don't know, 7, 8 years now. And so I guess it can't be too uncommon. I did see that at least one of the reports and sourcing was from Syrian state media, which would, I guess, be looking to probably make some propaganda out of it if the U.S. was just bringing in a routine convoy or something like that. I've heard it called a routine convoy, but at the same time, you know, people are, you know, just kind of taking this one story and one headline and tweeting out like, oh, Biden's escalating in Syria. So, uh, from what you've been able to tell, do we have any idea of really what's going on in Syria, or is it just kind of like there's no, the Biden administration isn't saying anything, the media and people who have access to the administration aren't saying anything, and so we just have some questionable reports to go on?
Yeah, I agree. As in, there's not much reporting that's been going on this. I've only seen a couple of articles, and seems to, as you say, the source seems to link back to the Sana, which is the Syrian state news. And I don't understand why they would, on one hand, report on this if it was just general practice, although I think that maybe seems to be the case. Of course, otherwise they would have to report on it every time. And also the amount of troops that, have moved into Syria from Iraq are about 200 is what is reported, which is a substantive number if we compare to the amount of troops that the US has in Syria in total, which is about 900. It's a high percentage. But yeah, it doesn't seem very